This video is supported by Rocket Railways for all your model railway needs. Please check the link in the description below. Hello and welcome back to Galgormhall for episode 6 of the Scratch Build series. This time I am looking at fitting out the interior detailing of the box, and we also add the final bits and pieces to the roof. I hope you enjoy it. At the end of the last episode, this was the position that we were in with regards to the roof. So there's a couple more things I want to add before that's it concluded. The first of those is to add the capping stones to the edges, or the top edges, and where each side meets. So for that we are going to use some duct tape. So what we will do, if I can find the edge, is take some of that, and we want to use, just put it on to, we want to put it onto a smooth, clean surface. Now if you put this directly onto your workbench or your cutting mat, that sort of thing there, it can pick up the odd little bit of dust and debris in that, and it obviously loses its tackiness then whenever you go to apply it to the actual building. With that there in place, we'll mark it out at approximately 5mm intervals, and we'll not start right at the edge because that's quite rough. So with those strips marked out and cut, we can now peel it away from this plastic, and I think what we'll do first is to start with the corner sections, and we'll apply them first. And if we work from the top down, and you're trying to center that as much as you can on the edge, and then we'll fold it over onto either side and try and manipulate it into the edges of the tiles. And once we reach the bottom, it's just a matter of trimming the excess away carefully. Okay, and that's one strip on, and then we'll repeat it for the other three sides and then along the top. There we go. That sorts that out. Now the next thing we want to look at is the guttering for around the edges, but before we do that, it would be more prudent to prime the roof ready for painting at a later date. So let's get that primed first, and then we'll come back and look at the guttering. While I'm priming that, let's go over and we'll take a look at the internal aspects of the box. To try and get a sort of varied texture or tonal colours to the floorboards, you'll see there I have 4 individual paint pots all opened up, and they're all sort of variations of brown. Some are from Revell, one from Humble, and I've even got an old Airfix pot of paint there as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take each of these paints in random, and each of the boards that are marked on the board, I'm just going to paint them, and I'm not going to clean the brush in between. I'm just going to dip it in randomly as we go along and just build up the entire board. And there we are, that's it complete. So already hopefully you can see despite the reflection of the light on that we've got real sort of tonal differences now in the floorboards. Paint has now completely dry, and hopefully you can see the variations in colours that we've got in that brick. And all we want to do now is to apply a grey acrylic paint over the top of it, same as what we do whenever we're painting the brickwork here. And once it's on, we will rub most of it off with the kitchen towel. And in this case here, we want to make sure that we get right down into the grooves of the boards, and we can rub that off. And that's it, the flooring's done. We don't need to go into any more detail than that. It's just enough to give the effect of a nice wood grain floor, and that is now ready to glue on into the box. And for that we are just going to use the good old rocket glue. We'll run a bead round the flooring there and we can get that put into place. So let's take a quick look at dressing the interior of this building. I have the floor already in place, and you may have noticed actually whenever I was painting the floor that there's a little angled bit cut out of it here, and I'll come back to that in a minute. First off, what we need to do with the interior is to tidy up the walls. Now you could simply just slap a bit of paint onto that in your preferred colour. What I'm opting to do is to basically wallpaper it, but what I'm wallpapering it with is just some plain white card. If you take a drop of the rocket glue and use a paintbrush to apply it, as long as you give that paintbrush a good clean out with water afterwards, it's a much more controlled application. And then we can just slot that down into place. Now it doesn't have to be perfect, it's just enough to freshen up and tidy that interior area. Also bear in mind, leave a little bit left at the top for the recess, for the recess of your roof, so that that doesn't get into the sort of hinder the placing the roof in place. Okay, so that's in place and the room is now ready. You'll also notice that I have painted the interior sides of the window panes, or sorry, the window frames white, so everything now matches in. Going back to this little corner, this corner is to allow me to feed my wires down from the light which will go into the roof, and I'm cut out a small piece of card and I have angled it, and then it's just a matter of placing that in there, and again with the rocket glue putting it into place, and it creates a false wall to hide your wires behind. Now I have cut it slightly lower just to make sure that there's enough space for the wires to sort of pop in and over. I don't want to have to be trying to hack that at a later date. Now the next thing you need to do is to look at the glazing of the windows. Now each of these windows measures approximately 17 millimeters high by 15 wide. So what I have done is taken some paper and I've drawn a grid running down and lines across, so the width of the two lines, the two vertical lines, is 17 millimeters, and then the spacing beneath or between each one is 15, creating that little box. And then you can overlay your acetate or whatever you're using for your panes of glass, mask it down, and it gives you a template to be able to cut out each individual piece of acetate. You can't really do this as one single piece because one of the windows sits out and the other one sits back. So by cutting one of those out, certainly the the ones that sit in, I'll do it on the outside just so we can see it. It will just rest in and you pop it into place. And really all you're needing to do there is to run a little bit of glue along each part of the window frame on the inside, and that'll glue it to place. I would suggest probably something like Yoo-hoo would be the best option. So the final piece to add for the interior is obviously all the equipment. And in between all these builds, I have been busy beavering away getting this painted up. These pieces have all come from the Ratio signal box interior kit, and they produce some great little pieces for the box. We obviously have a lever frame which has got 20 levers on it. We have a stove, we've got a desk with a reading lamp, we've got our control panel, boxes, a seat for the signalman to sit at, a shelf with books. This is for the stove to sit upon, a coal scuttle, and some sort of strong box of some description or other. So these are all the pieces that I'm going to use to put in here. One thing I will say is, with regards to the stove, obviously the stove pipe coming out from it protrudes too high up above the wall and will obviously hinder the placing of the roof. But if it's trimmed down to the height of the roof, we will keep this piece, and at a later date, once everything is finished, we'll drill a small hole into the roof of the building and we can glue that on, and that'll be the external pipe coming out of the building, and basically that'll just be positioned on the roof dependent on where you would like it to be. With the signal box interior pretty much done, let's take one final look at the roof before we finish this video. The other thing that I want to add is some guttering around the edges, and for that we are going to be cheating a little bit and using this is the Plastruct 0.030 square rod, and it's got the channel in it. You could use curved, and probably we should be using curved, but this is so much easier to attach to the sides, and in all honesty it's barely noticeable the difference anyway whenever you're looking at it from that sort of 3 foot distance. So we'll do one side of this, and what I need to do is to angle at one end here at a 45, and then I can mark this up so that the inside of that 45 will go on the edge of the side of the building, or the side of the roof, and then at the other end with my pencil I can mark the other side, and then I know that I need to cut out from that side another 45-degree angle, and that is one length ready to go on to the building, and that'll just go on again with the rocket glue, and once dried you can put a lick of paint onto that, and then we'll repeat the process right the way around all 4 sides. Okay, I think that maybe will do it for this episode. We have our interior completed, and I think it looks rather good. And our roof is all ready for the final coats of paint to be applied to it. Incidentally, with regards to the duct tape along the top, you may notice it is coming away in certain places there, and that may just well be that my duct tape has lost a little bit of its tackiness, but not to worry. You can just sort of with a cocktail stick run a little bit of super glue in underneath and press it down, and that will hold it into place. So I will do that before I apply the final coats of paint to it. Right, thank you very much again for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the build. Next time is the big one, and it's probably the most difficult aspect of the build, and that is to fit the steps coming up to the box itself. I'll see you soon, and thanks again for watching. Bye.